so in the Republic in the south of Ireland, uh, basically you point out that U2 were starting a real model for DIY, which was really followed in, in that period, or maybe more common in that period, 1976 to 1982, which Ireland was a site of, I think you say, innovation and enterprise. And you talk about these young people. I think you're talking about your generation of entrepreneurs and who could cope with these new forms um, of Irish culture. And who are these people? I think I'd like you to talk more specifically about people like the Hope Collective and somebody like Michael McCaughan, who is one of the people who really changed the terms of, the way bands were playing and where they were playing and who had access to them and which band could have access to venues that maybe they wouldn't have accessed without these people, and that made them key individuals.
Yeah, and Michael McCaughan is a great example of that DIY. So here's a guy who's not in the music industry because he's just the entertainment officer. It's a student union position elected by students. So he's not a full-time salaried member of the music industry. He becomes the ENS officer in Trinity. There's no money. The budget is gone. And he has to do things on a shoestring. But McCaughan had a vision that I want everyone in Trinity to be entertained. I want everyone in Trinity to feel that I, as the ENS officer, and the team around me have put on something that will bring them joy. So it wasn't specific. I love dance music, so we'll have a great year of dance music for me and my mates. This was a guy who loved the Virgin Prunes and the Cramps and Danon. He loved Irish traditional music. So he put on a load of concerts. And it wouldn't have been easy because there was no budget. So you're relying on favors, and then you do enough things and they generate a bit of money, and then you've got a bit of a budget. But he was phenomenally successful. And he gave opportunities to unsigned Irish bands because he felt they deserved support. And maybe clubs wouldn't put them on, or maybe they'd no following, so they didn't belong in a club. But he famously put on Fiachna and Liam from Hothouse Flowers to do traditional Irish music concerts above the front entrance of Trinity College. I remember people who were bringing over French students would pass by under the front arch of Trinity. Yeah. So, before Hothouse Flowers were Hothouse Flowers making money, they were people gaining experience because of people like Michael McCaughan. He put on some of Cry Before Dawn's early gigs, and he thought, here's a band from Wexford who like the Psychedelic Furs and probably the Clash, but they've got uilleann pipes, and they're this amazing fusion. So he just saw bands that he thought needed and deserved support. There were bands like the Golden Horde. He championed Paranoid Visions, those Handsome Devils, the Pleasure Cell, Five Go Down to the Sea he put on with Stars of Heaven. And then famously he puts on the Pogues. The first Pogues tour of Ireland isn't with a major promotions company. It's with it's DIY. And that's fascinating. And it's also really important because there was a time where the ENS officer in Trinity, or UCD, or Limerick, or Cork, or Galway, was a very significant force in the development of the music industry, but they were only generally there for a year. It was an elected position. So they were amateurs. They were from the DIY side of things. And I think, more needs to be researched and written about people like Michael McCaughan and the other entertainment officers, because I think they revolutionized the Irish music industry, and they were from the DIY side of things.
Yeah.
And then another huge stage, it's the Hope Collective. It's a bunch of young people who decide the bands we like don't come to Ireland. And famously, they write to John Robb from the Membrane saying, why don't you come to Ireland? And he writes back, says, why don't you ask me? And they were like, okay. And they did the gig, and it just built to incredibly to where they were able to sell out the biggest, or one of the biggest rock venues in the city, the SFX, when they put on Fugazi, Chumbawamba, and local band In Motion. They were there that as Therapy were developing. So when Therapy were an independent band, the Hope Collective put on their gigs, but as soon as they signed a major label, they said, we still love you, we'll buy your records, but you can't do any of our gigs. So sometimes there was certainly a famous case where Therapy then had to be the roadies for a different band.
Yeah.
But it was an extraordinary moment where it showed that small countries like Ireland, small scenes that don't seem to have a lot to do with the major labels, that with enterprise and innovation and dedication and care and a sense of fun, to be honest, young people can do remarkable things. And or older people, new entrants. When I say young people, it's really my code for people who don't think they belong in the music industry, or that the music industry is scary or organized. And the Hope Collective put on Green Day's first Dublin show, which is remarkable.
You've got some great anecdote about the SFX, Green Day, Courtney Love in that chapter. I think maybe you could tell us about the Green Day gig, because I think that was quite funny to read anyway.
Well, the Green Day story is really interesting because it's something that 30 or 40 years later still matters to Green Day. And they, on one of their recent trips to Ireland, they're playing Marley Park. So they're playing to a huge crowd.
Huge.
And on the day, they went down the docks to the site of the White Horse Inn, and took photographs and said, this is our first gig. And they kept the flyer, like this handmade flyer that these kids in the Hope Collective had made for the gig. And they said, oh, it's now a Starbucks. And, they kind of were joking, oh, we should bum rush it and, and do a show there. But they also recalled, they were interviewed by Hot Press and, about what they remembered for those gigs. And Billy Joe talked about, like, it's the only time in our career where we said, okay, it's brilliant to be here. We want you to have a great time. But do you mind not moving? Do you mind not jumping up and down? Because we've been told that the ceiling might give way if anyone jumps up and down. So, they said that the place was a dive even compared to the dives that they were playing in California at the early stage in their career and other places in Europe. And that kind of shows how much the DIY scene matters, because there weren't great venues in the 70s, 80s, into the 90s in Ireland. The facilities for encouraging young bands were very, very lacking. But yet these people like Michael McCaughan and later Edwina Forkin and Jim Davis in Trinity, and there were some great entertainment officers. Elvira Butler in Cork had preceded this with the Arcadia, which was dry, an alcohol-free venue that used to get 1,000 people every night, that she ran gigs, and she put on, the Cure famously, as well as lots of early U2 gigs. So I think that the entertainment officers, and then people like the Hope Collective and other collectives that have come along subsequently, have a huge, 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 but under-acknowledged role in the development of what is a very successful music industry today.